I'm going to ask you a question. You need to answer it truthfully, and it's got to be honest. You have to actually answer it, like out loud, sitting in your chair. All right, here we go. So, you ready? Good. All right. Who is your favorite president? Good answer. Hey, that was a really solid president. Super good leader. But we're gonna put a pin in that just for now. We're gonna put a pin in it. Keep it in the back of our minds. I promise you, I'm gonna get back to him later. But he was a really good leader. And really, what makes a good leader and all good leaders is they have two qualities, right? Every good leader has two qualities, and that is empathy and that is influence. Every good leader has it. Right, and so hopefully I'm going to take you behind the scenes, show you why empathy and influence make a good leader. I'm going to give you a bit of a verbal diagram so you can maybe see it out. And then I'm going to put a face to a name so it's more tangible, right? But John C. Maxwell, who, regardless on if you agree with megachurches or not, was a really good leader, right? He led megachurches all across the nation, congregations of 10,000 people or more, each and every week, each and every Sunday, right? And it was multiple different megachurches. It wasn't just one or two. It was several across different states. And he says that the two most important qualities for each leader to have are empathy and influence. Same as before. Empathy and influence. Two most important qualities any leader can have, right? And he first mentions empathy because if a leader does not have empathy, he or she does not connect with their followers, right? If you can't connect with their followers, it's like having an orchestra that's out of tune, right? That nobody's together. It just doesn't sound good. It doesn't work, and it won't last, right? And that's what leaders with empathy do. They connect with their followers. They know their needs. They know why they feel the way they feel, and they know how to alleviate the problems within his or her community. That's why leaders need empathy. All good leaders have empathy too. John Sanford of Stanford University, who is an editor for the College of Arts and Humanities at Stanford University in California, he also agrees with John C. Maxwell, and that the two most important traits for a good leader to have are empathy and influence, right? And he touches a little more on influence. He thought I forgot about it, but I didn't. He touches a little more on influence, and he says that really one of the most important jobs that a leader will have is to make sure that the organization that he or she leads lasts and make sure it stands the test of time. And that not only is it good and positive and it's a good organization, but that it has legacy, and that therefore that leader also has legacy and has the influence to build that legacy, right? So all good leaders will have empathy and influence. Now, Linda Hill of the Harvard Business Review, she touches a little more in depth for that. She gives us a bit of a verbal diagram for it, and she gives us three kind of personalities that all good leaders have. Every single one has all three, right? And you can see empathy and influence in all three, right? But the three are: they have to be architects, they also have to be bridgers, and they have to be catalysts, right? And so they have to be architects because leaders, any good leader worth their salt, has to plan the future of his or her organization, right? He has to take them in the direction that he wants to take the organization into, right? And the leader has to have empathy to do that, because he has to know what his or her followers can't do, what they're not comfortable with, or what they are comfortable with, right? Their boundaries. And that's where the empathy comes in. And they have to have the influence to enforce that, right? The University of South Florida says, quick digression, the University of South Florida says that leaders should be hardworking and they should be confident, right? And that kind of goes under influence, because you're going to be influenced by someone who's hardworking and confident, but you have to be confident in your plan to make it work. And that's where the catalyst comes in, because good leaders also have to be catalysts, right? And they have to be confident in their plan. They have to have the influence over their plan and over the people to have that spark that ignites the whole organization and gets them super excited to move forward and execute those plans and have a really positive atmosphere, right? So they have to be the catalyst. They also do be the bridger, and that's again where the empathy comes in, because they have to level with their adversaries and they have to look them in the eyes, right? And it's hard to do that. It's hard to look someone who's against you in the eyes and get them to see, again, eye to eye with you, to level with them, to agree with them, right? And you have to have lots of empathy, not only for your own followers, but for those against you, if you want to do that, right? So Landis Hill's verbal diagram comes in very helpful, right? Architects, bridgers, and catalysts. Those three things leaders are, and they can't do that without either empathy or influence. Now, your president, you said earlier, I told you I'd come back to him. President, you said earlier, I'm going to be honest, I have no idea who you picked. And I know that's obvious, but I don't. I would really, I would really like it if you told me later in class who you picked, but I went with Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Teddy Roosevelt to me is a really good example of all these qualities bundled up in one. Regardless of politics, he's a good example because he is an architect, right? He had a plan for America. Progressivism was kind of grassroots before him. It wasn't really known. He was the one that brought up progressivism, right? He was the architect. He was the bridger. Not everybody agreed with trust busting. He had to bridge the gap between the two. And he was the catalyst. He was the spark. He was the personality that drove progressivism, right? He was those three. He also had empathy and influence. We still, millions of people, millions of Americans, foreigners, still visit the national park system to this day, every single year. His influence still stands. He had the empathy with his people. That's why he was a progressive, because he had the empathy to realize that his people were being exploited and the environment was being exploited by the monopolies. So when I think of good leader, I think of Theodore Roosevelt, right? And I'm sure your president was good. You can tell me later. But really, that's all there is to a good leader. They have to be an architect. They have to be a bridger. They have to be a catalyst. But more importantly, and really what goes into all that, they have to have empathy. They have to connect with their followers. And they have to have the influence to make it last and to build their organization's influence. That's a good leader.